All right, I think that we are live. I'm going to double check on YouTube just to make sure. Give me a moment. Yes, good. Looking good. Great. So thanks everyone for being here. I'm really excited to have a conversation about an issue that I actually really think a lot about. And obviously, as a neuroscientist, I'm fascinated with what animates people and what makes us tick. Obviously, that's a big part of why I do the job that I do. And I'm super excited to have Will Duffy with me today. So let me give a little introduction before I bring Will on. So Will Duffy is an author and a pastor in Colorado, just outside of Denver. And his professional background is really like in finance. That's obvious from the books that he's written, titles of which are Roths for the Rich, How to Fund Your Roth with Over $100,000 each year, and The Other Side of the Coin. You know, both of these, which are obviously important aspects to financial investing. But for my audience, he's going to be best known for his fantastic project called The Final Experiment. So, okay, Will took this audacious project to definitively debunk the flat Earth conspiracy theory, you know, which had really kind of been growing in acceptance over and prominence like throughout the 21st century, right? This is an idea that's been, you know, put to the waste bin for centuries, but here we are in the 21st century with all the technology and developments that we're having, and somehow there's now a growing population that believes that the earth is flat. So for those that don't know, flat earthism is the contention that the earth is not a globe, but it is in fact a flat disk with the North Pole at the center of that disk, okay? The moon and the sun are glowing objects that hover just mere thousands of miles above the surface of the earth, according to flat earth theory. And then the other part of the flat earth model is that there isn't Antarctica at the bottom of the globe as a simple continent, that instead Antarctica is an ice wall ring at the edge of that Earth disk. You can almost think of the ice wall as holding in all the water so that it doesn't fall off the edge of the disk, I guess. I think that's how some people in flat earthism think of it, whatever. All right. So for years, though, flat earthers have claimed that you cannot visit Antarctica, right? You can't visit Antarctica because it's defended by the UN and the globalists, who are trying to prevent you from seeing the fact that they, according to their view, that there's not going to be a 24-hour sun at in the global summer, right? So we know in the northern hemisphere, where I think it's something like 90% of the population of the Earth lives, that in the summer, if you're above the Arctic Circle, you can watch the sun go completely around you. This is also going to be true for the global summer, for the summer for the global south, you know, so where it'd be completely dark in the north and it'll be 24-hour sun in the south. But of course, there aren't that many people there, so it's not as well documented as the 24-hour sun is in the north. This, of course, works in the flat earthers' favor, because then they can pretend that like the people who want to make everyone think that there is a globe, that they're just lying to you, that there isn't an actual 24-hour sun. Now, like a dog with a bone, Will knew that this is wrong. He knew that you could actually visit Antarctica, that there are, in fact, travel companies that will take you there. And he worked with one of those companies to allow him to bring a group of flat earthers and several folks who perform science communication to debunk flat earthism to directly observe the 24-hour sun. And he did this in December of 2024. That event, I mean, in my opinion, it really took the wind out of the sails of flat earthism, and it really led many in the movement to renounce the conspiracy theory, including one of like the most prominent flat earthers. This project, I think, you know, Will, he conducted this flawlessly. And from what I understand, he's in the process of creating a documentary called The Midnight Sun, The Final Experiment. And I'm looking forward to seeing that. Now, the other thing about Will is that that's interesting about him is that he is a Christian pastor, and he leads this congregation in Colorado. He also happens to be, as far as I know and understand, that he's a young Earth creationist, and that he believes the Earth is 6,000 years old, and that there was a global flood, and so on and so forth. But as a man of integrity, like, he doesn't claim to have unlimited knowledge on these things, and he's open to learning about the world, including about these issues. And in that effort, he's been doing these monthly live streams with arguably the most prominent pro evolution science communicationer on YouTube, Erika of the Guts at Giving channel. I adore Erika. I think she does fantastic work. She really is smart, and she's funny. She makes really great videos. So obviously, if you haven't seen those videos, you should check those out. But if you're a fan of my content, you probably already know who she is. So I've been watching many of these live streams, and I've really been enjoying the conversation between Will and Erika. I find them to like really be engaging with the material, and I can see that Will is learning a lot and developing his ideas around evolution and creation. And I'm excited to see where that goes. That's not why I brought him on today, though. I brought him on because there have been several points during the discussion between Erika and Will about human nature, and Will has mentioned many times about the existence of the soul. And as a neuroscientist, this got me very intrigued. And since I'm interested, obviously, kind of in evolution, of course, as you know from like much of the content of my channel, but I'm also obviously way into communicating and trying to relay my enthusiasm for the brain and the nature of human nature and human behavior. This got me really intrigued. So I reached out to Will to see if he'd be willing to come on and chat with me about the soul and to see if he would be willing to do that. And here he is in the flesh digitally, so to speak. And I'm really glad that you're here, that we can have this conversation, Will. So thanks for coming. Really appreciate it. So yeah, thanks. Would you like to add anything to my introduction there? I know that I'm really glowing you up quite a bit because I am a huge fan of your work. So
I appreciate it, Chris. I'm really glad you reached out. It was obviously a bit of a shock to hear from a neuroscientist. I hadn't met a neuroscientist prior.
Here I am, your first neuroscientist.
I love conversations like this.
Mm-hmm.
I especially love conversations where I'm passionate about a topic. And I do love, I think disagreement is great. I think disagreement actually helps people learn better. I know it helps me learn better. My wife, something she likes to do to learn is to actually take the position of the devil's advocate, so to speak.
Yeah.
Which is very frustrating in a marriage, but it does help. It does help learn. It helps you learn. It helps you see from other perspectives.
Yes.
And so I'm excited to have this conversation. We disagree on so much, but hey, this world is a cool place. And if it wasn't for the final experiment, I wouldn't have met Erika. If it wasn't for Erika, I wouldn't have met you. So here we are, and I'm pumped.
I agree. And the thing about disagreement is that there can be legitimate disagreement and less legitimate disagreement. Now, you can always take the devil's advocate. And honestly, I feel like that's a lot of what happens within flat earthism. I don't know the degree to which how many of the promulgators of flat earthism actually really believe in flat earthism. I had a debate with Austin Whitsitt, who I know you know who he is. He's a very good debater and very effective. We debated over whether fluoridation should happen or not. Would this happen on a modern day debates? And I could see like, all right, he's in this because he's just good at debating, is what I feel like. Maybe he really believes in flat earthism. Obviously, I don't know his heart or his mind or his soul, so to speak. But I can just see that he has a talent for debate, and that some of it just might be that. Whatever. I'm not going to necessarily point fingers at him. But the thing about flat earthism is that it's clearly built upon this like rubric of falsehoods and ignoring the things that all of us can agree are real. Even if we have to intuit those things, that we have to like, just take the word of you and other people who take equipment to South America and into Antarctica and observe a 24-hour sun, and that there has to be some trust involved, of course, for us to like fully disambiguate a debate. But I think that that's fair in some ways, and that we can have that trust. I don't necessarily need to go to Antarctica to know that the Earth is a globe and not a flat disk. There's a lot of other reasons why I believe the Earth is a globe, not just because I haven't observed a 24-hour sun in the South, but the thing is, okay, then when you get into things like say the age of the earth or evolution, those are going to be things where, like, obviously you and I could disagree quite a bit on those things. And I might argue, all right, this is less legitimate, but it's a more legitimate argument than the shape of the earth, because those are things you can directly observe today. Whereas the age of the earth, evolution, these are historical sciences, and there's always going to be some degree of ambiguity where there's going to be openness to interpretation to some degree, right?
Yeah.
But we're not talking about that today. Then if you get into things like the nature of humanity and what is a soul and what is the mind, those kinds of things, these are complicated issues where there's legitimate debate for sure. And that these are open questions, even from the perspective of a neuroscientist. I have my position, you have your position, but I also have to admit that I don't know everything about this issue, just from, because it's not something that I actually work on. It's just something that I am very interested in and I read about. I read the primary literature on, but I don't do the research on these topics about, say, human consciousness and free will and those kinds of things. It's just something that I read because I'm interested in it from a neuroscience perspective. But like, I also know that there's debate in the literature about the nature of these things, right? Amongst neuroscientists and amongst philosophers. And so, like, this is an issue where we're open to debate here and just discussion, really, more than anything else, because it's a legitimate issue to discuss. Anyway, that's where I wanted to start. So awesome. Why don't you get me up to speed on what your position is as far as, I guess, what is a soul? Do you want to start there?
Actually, I want to ask you a question.
Please, go ahead.
So when you first contacted me,
yes,
one of the things you said in your email was most neuroscientists don't believe in a soul. So I just want to get your reaction to something. Sure. What would you think if I told you most neuroscientists believe in God? What would you think?
I think, I don't know if that's necessarily true, but it wouldn't surprise me. I think that that's possible. Sure.
Okay. And let's say I gave you data and it was true.
Sure.
Then what would you think?
Well, then I would want to, of course, investigate, like, what is the nature of the study that it came from, but I wouldn't deny it per se. I think that it's possible that, especially depending upon how you define neuroscientists, that if it includes neurosurgeons, neurologists, then I think that you would probably easily get that number above 50% of those that believe in a god, I guess, or a deity of some kind. Amongst practicing neuroscientists who do basic neuroscience, I would bet that it's probably less than 50%, but I don't know if it necessarily is.
If it was true, and by the way, I have no data.
Okay.
I don't have anything I'm going to pull out here.
Okay, gotcha.
If it was true, would that sway you from becoming an atheist to accepting that there is a God?
No, because I don't take it on consensus of like what is the position of the people in my field. So we had a conversation on email, and I don't talk about this too much, like in my live streams, but it's probably pretty easy for people to tell that I'm an atheist. I don't believe in deities. I just don't think that there's enough evidence for us to conclude that there are supernatural beings. And in fact, I don't know. I mean, if we want to get into this, I have an issue even with defining what do we mean by the word God or deities. Like, I'm not entirely sure what that means. Like, if I wanted to say to you, like, do you believe in trees? Like, do you believe in trees?
I do.
Okay, so do I. But if you didn't and you'd never seen a tree, maybe you wouldn't. But I could go and show you a tree. We could talk about what is a tree. But of course, these are reified things. Like, these are things that exist in the world. that we can have a long description of what they are physically, what they do. But when you say the word God, what is that? What is that thing? Like if I like it's different than trees, obviously.
Yes.
Right.
By the way, the reason I asked you this
Yeah.
was because I'm noticing something, and I'm not accusing you of this,
Sure.
but I'm noticing something in my discussions with Erika, specifically in regards to the comments. So I'm not even
Okay.
accusing Erika of this.
Yeah.
But when I read comments and when people email me, there really is an appeal to majority, an appeal to consensus, an appeal to authority.
Yeah.
And so what I've experienced in my own life, specifically with flat earthers, is they use arguments all the time that wouldn't convince them. And
Yeah.
so I've tried to learn from their mistake.
Mhm.
And so I now try to not use arguments that wouldn't be convincing to me.
Mhm.
And so I expected you to not be swayed that there is a God if, hypothetically speaking, most neuroscientists believe that there is a God.
Mhm.
And on the flip side, I'm not going to be convinced that there's not a soul if most neuroscientists don't believe in a soul.
Sure. Oh yeah, yeah. And I fully accept that. Yes. Like
Cool.
I wouldn't expect you to accept the consensus just because like that's what neuroscientists believe.
Yeah.
Um it's more from our understanding of the nature of human nature, or the the nature of what animates animals and people.
Mm.
That behavior is a manifestation of the activity of neural networks. That is basically the crux of neuroscience. That and that it's not dependent upon anything else. That we don't have to draw upon other things outside of the activity of neural networks to have at least a good understanding of what constitutes behavior.
Mm.
Um, that's
Well,
not to say, and that's a simplistic version,
yeah.
arguably, and I'm
I
happy to get into
I
it. But,
I I would push back on that.
okay.
And this is going to be rough because I have been feverishly trying to read 3 books at once.
Mm,
So
mhm,
I'm gonna be going off of memory here.
that's fine.
This is not my field,
Yeah.
but is it Penfield?
Yeah.
What's his name? What do you
I
recall?
think it's Roger Penfield,
Okay,
right?
so he's famous in the
Mhm,
world of neuroscience,
that's right.
and I believe he's famous for doing brain surgeries with patients who were awake
Mhm,
and mapping the brain.
right.
Now, he did discover that he could touch certain areas of the brain and cause the patient's like arm to go up or
Mhm,
something.
that's right.
So what he did as kind of an experiment is he would ask them to raise their arm randomly, and he would ask them when he would do it if they were choosing to do it or if it was involuntary.
Mhm,
And he did this on 1,100 patients and documented hundreds of thousands of times, and they had a 100% score. They knew when it wasn't their decision and it was just happening involuntary, and when it was their decision.
sure. Yeah.
So that right there is massive for me. It says that
Mm,
there's something more than the brain.
I don't know if that's the case. So, the involuntary movement to say raise your arm, and with Penfield's experiments, there were other parts of the brain that were being stimulated in order to induce a change. But a lot of that was involved in the mapping of the motor cortex. Now, the motor cortex, as we know, is especially primary motor cortex, where Penfield was doing a lot of his work. The it's there's what we call the homunculus. Now, the homunculus is a Greek word for little man, and the reason why we call it the homunculus, this is the map of the motor cortex. It's called a homunculus because there is a map of the body, and it's a body that's like a little man, right? those neurons connect to, we know the connection of those neurons, that they go down to the thalamus, through the thalamus, down into the spinal cord, acting on motor neurons. And it's mapped out in a way that, like, if you were to stimulate the parts of the motor cortex that, say, control your arm or your hand, that they act on then the motor neurons that are located in the more thoracic region of the spinal cord, which is then going to activate the muscles that then move your arm. But those motor neurons, they receive input from other parts of the brain. And so I would say that simply just activating motor output, but like the way Penfield did, that doesn't necessarily mean that the causation, the voluntary movement that gets induced within the brain to cause us to want to move the brain, or to move our arm, for instance, that's not someplace else within the brain, and that signal is just coming from someplace else in the brain, and that the point of consciousness or sentience, however you want to define those things, those aren't exactly the same, but they're somewhat related. That is going to be one that we can't fully explain through our current understanding of neuroscience, but there's so much of the neural correlates of consciousness and the neural correlates of sentience that seem consistent with the idea that it is a manifestation of that activity that allows for the result of voluntary movement.
By the way, I'm most excited to talk about the science.
Sure. Yeah.
But before we talk about the science, I want to talk about a more intuitive argument that I think people will resonate with. I'm pretty sure my wife and kids are watching, and so I think this will really resonate with my children as well.
Good.
Wouldn't you agree that there's something intuitive in each one of us that would lead us to believe that there's something that makes us us? Meaning all of our cells die and are replaced. So our physical body is constantly changing throughout our life, but there's something that remains, something that makes Will, something that makes Chris. Isn't that a really strong intuitive argument that we are more than just a physical body?
This is like the ship of Theseus, right?
Yeah,
right.
That's right.
So which is, so this is the I think it's a Greek myth where this ship was traveling around, and obviously as it's being used and as they're traveling, they got to replace parts because parts fall apart, and eventually the entire ship gets replaced over time, but it's functional that entire time. Like if you lose a mast, then you add a mast. If you've broken the bow, you got to replace the bow, and like eventually the whole thing can be replaced, but is it still the same ship even if it's been replaced? I think that, like obviously you can still be you at the end, even though the parts have been replaced. And that doesn't mean that so there's levels of causality, and I'm a believer of levels of causality, that while those levels of causality are going to be dependent upon the lower levels, there's still levels of causality that happen at upper levels. And some of that happens at, say, the cellular level or the tissue level, or at systems and behavioral level. And while they may be dependent upon those things that are below them, there's still a lot that's happening at that level. And so you can still replace the parts underneath, but it's still happening at that level. But that doesn't mean that it hasn't changed otherwise. Now I see that you brought up the presentation. Do you wanted to add this?
I'm just getting it ready.
Ready. Okay, gotcha. All right.
Why don't you go ahead and bring it up? So,
sure. All right, let's bring it up.
This is a quote from Dr. Michael Sabom, which I love. He says, "I think skepticism is good, true skepticism, but rigidity is not. In other words, if you have an ideological opposition to something and you fight it, should say, tooth and nail to support it, and refuse to look at the other side, that's not being objective."
Sure.
So, I want to ask you a question.
Sure.
Which is, what would convince you? So if you're truly open, what would convince you that we are more than just a physical body?
Well, okay. I would need to know several things. I would need to know, how does a non-physical entity interact with the physical entity? Because I am talking to, I'm obviously speaking, right? I'm using my vocal cords. I have a vocal box there that is driven through motor activity that's happening, that actually is also being initiated in my motor cortex. The way that I learned that was through activity that depended upon a number of brain circuits, including, say, the basal ganglia. In order for me to learn how to make those the phonemes that I'm making, which are English, right? I speak English, and I'm speaking English to you. You know English because we come from a society where English was spoken, and then they are hitting your eardrums, which are then activating neurons within your cochlea, which are then going through the eighth nerve, going up through your auditory brainstem, activating neurons within your auditory cortex. Now, that's a lot of neurocircuitry that's happening, but the things that I'm saying are clearly the result of like conscious activity, and you hearing it presumably are taking the words that I'm saying in. Maybe you don't know everything that I said there. That's okay. But you recognize most of those words, and you can probably put the pieces together because you're a well-read person. You can more or less understand what I'm saying. So you also have conscious activity, even though you're just sitting there passively listening. There's a lot of physical stuff that just happened there. Mm-hmm. So if there's something that's immaterial, I need to know how that immaterial thing is causing the physical stuff to happen.
Okay, so everybody
I need a mechanism, basically.
Yeah, everybody has their own standard of proof that they require, right?
Yeah.
I do want to suggest that what you're saying is possibly too rigid.
Okay.
What I'm hearing from you is that for you to be convinced that we are more than a physical body, you have to know how something works. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that that's how we normally process things, right? Like, for example, I'm not going to understand internal combustion engines. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to understand DNA replication. I'm not going to understand so many things, but that doesn't mean I can't be shown evidence that they're real.
Sure.
So like, yeah, go ahead.
Let's back up. So that's like imagining you were talking to an auto mechanic. Mm-hmm. And he was like, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I guess I just don't really understand how internal combustion engines work. I'm a neuroscientist. So of course I want to know how does something that's immaterial interact with material things? Mm-hmm. I can't expect the rest of the world to have the appreciation or my perspective of how behavior manifests itself, because it took years and years of study. I try to communicate that to people so that they can understand how the brain works, because I want them to understand this amazing thing that is between our ears. But I'm the auto mechanic, right? So it'd be silly for me to say like I will never ever know how an internal combustion engine works.
Yeah, but again, there's things that I think we should all agree exist, mm-hmm. even if we don't understand them. Like, we don't understand gravity that well. Honestly, we don't.
Sure. Right.
But that doesn't mean we should say, I'm not going to believe in it until I fully understand it. So is there anything that would mm-hmm. convince you we are more than a physical body, even if you didn't fully understand it?
Oh, sure. I think so. I mean, but one issue that I have with this, the history of this issue, the debate, the mind-body dualism debate, is one where at some point, several hundred years ago, like if you go back to Descartes, who established the modern understanding of the mind-body dualism debate. Now, obviously, this is an issue that goes back long before that. Aristotle and Plato and obviously Christian theology, Islamic theology has discussed these issues. Judaism, I mean, many religions, of course, like this, they all figure into this debate in many ways. But Descartes really sort of established the modern philosophical treatise of this. And he understood that, like, okay, well, there was a lot of things that was unknown at that time, right? Like, we knew barely anything about neuroscience, but Descartes was a good theorist in that he realized that there has to be some place for the interaction to occur if the mind is a separate entity from the body. And he also realized that obviously the brain has to be a big part of this. And he was an anatomist too, so he was interested in like understanding neuroanatomy and that kind of thing. And he determined that the soul or the mind must reside in the pineal gland. Now, do you know anything about the pineal gland? Have you heard of the
Not
pineal
much.
gland? It's fine. So it's a small part of the brain. It synthesizes melatonin, which I assume you know what that is, right? Melatonin is one of these hormones that's involved in sleep. You can take melatonin, like if you're jet lagged or something, you travel across the world and you're jet lagged, you might take over the counter melatonin to try to synchronize your body's homeostatic patterns with it, because we establish a 24-hour cycle that's based on light. And when you go across the world, suddenly your body's 24-hour clock is out of sync with the light that you're experiencing at that time. And melatonin is part of that. So you can sort of speed things up by taking melatonin. But the release of melatonin happens at the onset of darkness that makes us sleepy. Now, he didn't know that, obviously. We knew barely anything about the brain at that point. But the reason why I picked the pineal gland is because it's one of the only things that's in the brain that we only have one of. Everything else in the brain, there's two. And so if there's a single sort of soul source, like a soul or a ghost or something, it would make sense that it would have to be in one place. And so it sort of makes sense that he would pick the pineal gland, since there's really only one. Everything else in the brain, it's bilateral symmetrical. We've got, we were talking about the motor cortex earlier. There's the left motor cortex and the right motor cortex, and the left controls the right side of my body and the right controls the left side of my body. And there's all kinds of interesting experiments that we've done with split brain patients, that when we cut what's called the corpus callosum, which are the axon tracts that connect the left side to the right side, those patients still live more or less normal lives. But then we find out that there's some very interesting lateralization that occurs, that like one half of the brain does certain things and the other half of the brain does other things. And when the two hemispheres can't talk to each other, well, then they have these weird phenomena that emerge. Like, for instance, someone who has, so they'll do this corpus callosum procedure. It's very rare for them to do it now because we have other ways of treating these conditions. But in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, they were a lot more common. So you cut that axon tract that splits the brain, because they were having seizures, and you want to prevent the seizure from starting in one place of the brain and spreading across the entire brain. So, and this is one way that they can get relief from having grand mal seizures.
Yeah, it worked.
Right. Yeah, it worked. Yeah. And actually those patients, unlike say a lobotomy, which obviously had all kinds of problems for people, those patients really didn't have major deficits. Like, they still were perfectly fine. These split brain patients, though, one thing that they found out is that if you cut down their brain and you slice their brain open, like, and split the one half from the other half, if you put an object in the left side of their visual field, so that means that let's see, if you put it in the left side of their visual field, and so that it's not in the right side of their visual field, that information is getting to the right cortex. So, because the brain is crossed in many ways, and vision is one of those things. So that information makes its way to the right cortex. Now, for most people, the processing areas that allow for the categorization of objects is located in the left cortex. Those people, even though they can see the object, they cannot say what the object is. They will be blind to what that object is. They will know, of course, know what an object is. Like if it's a cup or a ball or something, if it's in the left hemisphere, or like what the color is, they cannot say those words if it's in the left hemisphere, if it's in the left side of the visual field. And it's because that information is getting to the right hemisphere but it can't cross to the left. But
Mhm.
then if you just take that object and you move it into the right hemisphere, now that information is getting to the left hemisphere of the brain, and then it's getting to that part that's involved in categorization. And then they can say the name. And that says something about, and it also means like even touching that object, touching it is the same thing because it's again crossed. So it tells us that like these things about brain processing and things that we take for granted, it's set up in these neural circuits, and that these neural circuits manifest themselves in ways that are just based upon the physical structuring of those circuits. And that when we have these temporary modifications of these circuits, they speak to the fact that like there isn't just a single place in the brain that's where all this stuff that we usually ascribe to consciousness is located, that it's a manifestation of the connectivity throughout the entire brain, and that you can disrupt it by splitting it, right?
Yeah. Let me try this.
Sure.
Part of the scientific method, I would say it's a huge part,
Yeah.
is testing your hypothesis through experimentation and falsification. So what would falsify your view that the human body is only physical? What experiment or test could we do that would falsify that for you?
Well, it's tough because
Mhm.
what does it mean to be non-physical, right?
Mhm.
So like let's kind of back up a little bit. And I don't mean to play a Uno Reverso on you, but I guess I am a little bit.
That's fine.
So you know, okay, we're talking about, I guess, the soul, right?
Well, actually, no.
No.
So
Okay.
I'm talking to a scientist who
Yes,
believes that the physical body is purely material.
that's right.
All I'm asking is I want to apply the scientific
Sure.
method to this hypothesis, and I
Mhm.
want to know what would falsify that for you.
Well, okay. So I suppose that some of that is built upon a philosophical assumption that the world is made up of material causes, and that things that act within the material world have to be material, and that anything that is immaterial, if it is immaterial, if it's going to act on the material world, that it has to act somehow that we can detect it.
Mhm.
I'm open to those things manifesting themselves, and that maybe at some point we could determine how that works. But you can't, you wouldn't necessarily be able to. So it is a philosophical operating assumption that material world is caused by material things. And I
I
don't know if you can necessarily come
I
up with an
just
experiment.
I just want to know
Mhm.
if there's something that if it was proven to you, you
Yeah.
would say, "You know what? That's really good evidence that I'm wrong here."
Um, hmm. I'm trying to think of something that would also be consistent with everything that I know about the brain. Um,
Mhm.
the Let's see. I mean, honestly, I would be just satisfied with a model
Hmm.
for immateriality acting on material objects.
Hmm.
I don't know if that would be, I would be satisfied just at least as that as a starting point,
Mhm.
right? That, that, if we're going to take something that's like, I have a hard time even understanding how immateriality, like, what does that mean? And where does it begin?
Mhm.
Right. Like, I assume that, uh, like you think that we have souls, right? And that's not a terribly controversial opinion. I think most people believe that. Like,
For
I
sure.
think my opinion is probably the more controversial opinion, that we don't have souls. I would definitely be in the minority of the population. But what is that, and when does it start?
Mhm.
Is my kind of question. Like, it's a term like God that I don't understand. I don't even know what people mean when they say that word.
Okay, I'm gonna suggest for you a very simple experiment
Mhm.
that could prove that that we are not just a physical body.
Okay.
And that is if we could prove that someone has an out-of-body experience. Wouldn't that be a very simple way of settling this debate?
So potentially there could still be other explanations. But I have a hard time knowing what those mechanisms might be. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, I also think that we have to be cognizant of the fact that the claims of out-of-body experiences in the past, many times those have been shown to either be coincidence or outright fraudulent.
Mhm. Yeah.
And
So, and by the way,
Mhm.
this is important because back on the topic of evolution,
Sure.
there have been things that evolution got wrong,
Yeah.
and there's been fraud.
Oh,
And
sure. Right.
so that doesn't mean there's not legitimate things. So I think you should agree with me
Mhm.
that if there was a bona fide out-of-body experience, that would prove we are more than a physical body.
I don't know if I could necessarily agree with that.
Why is that?
Well, because the an out-of-body experience simply just might be another modality of sensation that we just haven't fully articulated yet. Like you can think like because there are animals that have other ways of sensing the world that are strange and unique that would be almost impossible for us to understand. So there are these electrosensory fish, for instance. They have an electrosense organ. They have these are actually pet fish that you can go out and buy. Some of them they have this like weird thing that's like this pole that sticks out of the bottom of their jaw, and it's filled with all these receptors, and they generate an electric field around their body, and they can sense the movement of other animals inside that electric field. And we don't have that ability, obviously. I cannot sense another animal behind me, who might be trying to get me, or that might be a prey item for me. But that is a way for that animal to have a sense of things that are outside of its body, even outside of its visual perception, its auditory perception, in a modality that is unique and completely different to the human experience.
Mm-hmm.
So if we were able to show that humans have the ability of some additional sense, say an out-of-body experience of some kind, we still have to be open to the idea that that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a non-physical thing. Does that make sense to you?
It does, but I'm sensing a rigidity from you that
Okay.
Dr. Michael Sabom said we shouldn't have.
Sure.
And I'm sensing like you're just unwilling to change your mind on this, even if there's evidence that's presented for you. Like I kind of want you to hear what you're saying to me.
Yeah.
You're saying even if we could show something,
Yeah.
you would still believe it's physical, even if there's no evidence that it's physical.
No, I didn't say that. I just said that we have to also be open to the idea that it could be physical.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. That something may appear as non-physical and almost mystical to us, right? How can an animal sense that there's another animal sitting behind it? When its eyes are pointed in front, it has ears, but it can just sense the presence of another animal. But we discovered that they are able to generate an electric field, and that the disturbance of that electric field is picked up along the electrosensory receptors that are along their body, and they have this organ that at the front of their chin that generates this field, right?
Yeah, so then we could test that, right?
Yes, that's right. Right, exactly. But that it simply could just be that there's another mechanism to explain those things. It's sort of like how, and this is the thing about behavior. Back in Descartes' time, we knew very little about how the brain works. So like talking about vision or hearing or any of those things, those are like basic mysteries to any anatomist at that time. We knew that, of course, we have ears and eyes, but everything that happens beyond that, who knows what that is. So the things that were ascribed to the mind at that time were things like perception, audition, the ability to make movement of, all of that was mind. The more that we've learned about the brain, the more that gets put into the mind gets put into a smaller and smaller box, because we don't need a mystical way of describing how the information that hits the retina, the light information that hits the retina, it acts on photoreceptors that then act on bipolar cells, which then act on the retinal ganglion cells that are also in our eyes, that then send their axons through the optic nerve that connect to the lateral geniculate nucleus of the thalamus, which then sends their projections to the primary visual cortex, which goes on to the other areas of the cortex, right? So we have now all of that information that Descartes did not have, and we don't need to ascribe mysticism to it in order to describe those things. And so in some ways, I feel like, obviously there's going to be some things about human behavior that at this point we just cannot describe in a neurophysiological way. And aspects that we put into the consciousness box or sentience box are definitely some of those. But it's what I like to think of as the ghost of the gaps issue. I'm sure you're familiar with God of the gaps argument, that God just gets put into a smaller and smaller box because, like, the more we learn about the way the world works, well, we don't need to ascribe gods to explain lightning anymore, because now we understand that it's electrostatic impulse, right? Those kinds of things.
It's now naturalism of the gaps. If you guys can't explain something, you say, we know it happened naturally, even though we have no idea how it happened.
Oh, no, I don't know if that's necessarily the case. It's that
for sure.
I don't know if that's the case.
Abiogenesis is the best example.
Oh, I disagree with that.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Okay, so there is no understanding or explanation how life would just spontaneously come about.
I disagree with that. That's not fair.
No, it's true. It's definitely true. And the life that you would have to describe has a digital code in it. That would never happen by itself.
Really?
No.
And how do you know that?
Because it's never been observed.
So it's never been observed, so therefore it could never happen.
If we have no explanation for how something happened, we need to be open that there's not a natural explanation for it.
Sure, I agree. We have to be open to it, but that doesn't mean that there isn't one. And there are models by which, how you want to call it, a digital code, it's the genetic code, right? It's the 4 chemicals, the guanine and cytosine, adenine, and thymidine, that make up the genetic code. Those are just chemicals, and they interact in various ways, right?
Exactly, but those chemicals don't form themselves into a double helix.
No, they don't.
That's a design.
Right.
That's a design.
No, I don't think that that's true.
If you found sticks in the forest in a double helix, you wouldn't think, crazy, the wind did that.
That's interesting that you should say that, because and actually this goes to Antarctica. So there are these rings in Antarctica. They're like perfect circles. And for a long time, it was thought that these circles must have emerged. So many people had thought about these things. Like, was there some sort of ancient civilization that was there that made these perfect circles? Is it aliens? Of course, like the alien community got into it. There has to be some way to explain these rock circles that are in the Antarctica. A paper was published around 15, 20 years ago. It was published on, they put the cover, made the cover of Science. They came up with a model that explained how these emerge just from freezing and thawing of the rocks, that it allows for these circles to emerge naturally.
Yeah, a circle is a simple shape that we see all over the universe.
Sure.
I'm talking about a double helix, and then if those sticks had Morse code on them, and had a message, then we would definitely not think that this was chance.
But we can watch DNA form
from previous life.
Yeah,
that's why I said abiogenesis.
Right. Okay. So you're talking about abiogenesis. Yeah. Well, I mean, look, we're kind of getting off track.
Okay. I think for purposes of the conversation,
Yes.
it's going to be super important that you define what death is.
Okay.
Because I'm going to bring things up, and I want to make sure I know exactly what you think death is.
Yeah. So death, as far as I am concerned, it's brain death. So when brain activity has ceased, I'm satisfied to say that that's when death has occurred.
How do we know brain activity has ceased?
You can measure brain activity through a variety of mechanisms. You can do electrophysiological recordings. You can look for blood flow in the brain. Even just, I mean, if we're talking about warm-blooded animals, we can measure even just the temperature. If it gets to room temperature, that's a good sign that the animal is dead. But electrophysiology is going to be the best way.
Okay. I want to make sure that you're not going to move the goalposts on me here.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So you would say if there's brain death, that person cannot come back alive ever.
No, I wouldn't say that necessarily.
Okay. So then it's not death then. So I want to know what
Sure.
death is in your mind.
So you're going to talk about near-death experiences, I guess.
Absolutely.
Okay. So how long can someone so I would say that if the brain is dead and decomposing, that person cannot come back to life.
Okay, so brain cells start decomposing, I think 20 seconds after the heart stops?
No.
Yeah, they start. It's slow, but they do start.
Yeah. I'm talking more like if it's 12 hours or longer, then I would be confident that person's not coming back to life.
Okay, so that's your definition of death.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, I don't deal with that. I work on brain development, so I think more about when brains are being built than when they cease to work. So I would have to investigate this further. But if the brain has ceased to function and is decomposing, I would be confident to say that person's not coming back.
Okay. How do we measure decomposing? It seems it doesn't seem scientific for me.
Oh, sure. So decomposition, I would want to look for, cell degeneration. There's a process by which cells degenerate, that the membranes are starting to fall apart of the neurons, and that obviously there's not going to be any neural activity detected in any neuron in the entire brain.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So it sounds like there isn't a point of death for you.
Oh, sure there is.
Oh, there is. But so
I mean, I don't know if there's going to be like a hard line,
because there's a lot of neurons.
Yeah, it's a gradual process, right? Yeah, like you could have some neurons that start to die in some parts of the brain, but obviously that person can continue to live, right? If you have an injury to your brain, you take Phineas Gage, for instance. I don't know if you know who Phineas Gage is. He's a famous case in neuroscience. He was a rail worker who was working on building a railway, and he was tamping down a post into a rock that they were going to explode with dynamite. But unfortunately, the dynamite went off, and that post went through his head and destroyed part of his prefrontal cortex. So it went all the way through his head. He survived, but obviously the neurons that got impaled by this bar did not. And he lived for quite some time. But the thing about that was that he also had all kinds of behavioral changes, largely having to do with his personality, that his personality was radically changed because this bar had eliminated a part of his brain. Now, some of the parts of his brain did die, but other parts continued to live. And obviously most of his brain continued to live. So he obviously was not dead, but right.
Yeah, it's tough. There's also people that are missing a majority of their brain.
Oh, sure. Yes, there are. Yes.
So
many of them are born that way or develop that way, but yeah.
I'm going to give a more simple definition of death that I think matches that I think can account for everything that we have
Sure.
in science.
Okay.
My definition of death is when the soul is separated from the body.
When you say soul, what do you mean?
The immaterial part of our existence.
Okay.
By the way,
Uh-huh.
there's a lot of different words that get thrown out: consciousness, mind, psyche, soul, spirit.
Yeah.
I can't tell you what the difference is, if any of these things, but
Sure.
any of those words, I'm talking about the same thing. I'm talking about what makes us us.
Right. Like you would describe, like obviously I believe that humans have consciousness, but I think consciousness is not a thing, it's a concept. There's a great book. I've been doing a little reading too. This is a book that I've been reading. It's called The Concept of Mind by Gilbert Ryle. And in this book, he's talking about that these are that these are concepts, right? And that it's sort of like, all right, like if so I'm a professor at St. Mary's College of Maryland. And if I wanted to bring you, I bring you out to Southern Maryland. It's a beautiful place. It's not going to be nearly as beautiful as most of Colorado, but there's a lot that's beautiful about it. We're along the Chesapeake Bay. We've got all kinds of water, which you don't have nearly as much of in Colorado. So you could come out here, and you want to see the college. So you're like, hey, Chris, show me the college. Like, I want to see this college that you talk about, the St. Mary's College of Maryland. So I bring you to St. Mary's. You see the sign in the front. I drive you up Campus Drive. I take you to Schaefer Hall and to Good Pasture Hall, which is where we're at right now. This is where I'm at in my office. I could take you over to the athletic center. We can go to the Performance Arts Center. We can go to the Daily Grind and get some coffee. We can go to the great room where the students eat. I could show you the dormitories. And then I can say to you, like, this. So here we have, this is St. Mary's College of Maryland. He's like, well, okay, you showed me Good Pasture, and you showed me Schaefer Hall, and you showed me the Art Center, and blah blah blah, and so on and so forth. But where's the college? Like, well, no, the whole thing is the college. Like, I am the college. My colleagues are the college. The students are the college. The Good Pasture Hall is the college. The sign in the front is the college. It's a collection of a bunch of processes underneath it all to create the concept of the college. So the college doesn't actually exist. It's not a thing. It's not a thing that I can really point to. It's made up of things and processes and people, but it's not a thing. Okay. It's more of a thing than, say, like what consciousness is. But the consciousness is the result of a variety of processes.
I don't think this works.
Okay.
What parts do you need to have consciousness?
That's a great question. I think that it depends on how you define consciousness. How do you define consciousness?
It's what we all experience.
Yeah, it's like self-experience, basically. It might be how you define consciousness. But you need perception to a good degree, because
but hold on. What is perception? Because you don't need eyes, you don't need ears, you don't need a nose to have consciousness.
We do know, and scientists that work on this, that individuals that have, say, loss of sight have different experiences for their consciousness.
But they have consciousness. So you don't.
They have consciousness, but they have a different kind of consciousness.
Yeah, but I'm just saying you don't need eyes to be conscious. So I don't think the college analogy works, because I don't think you can tell me what parts you need to be conscious.
It's same for the college.
Well, I could tell you that you need to have a building, and you need to have students, and you need to have teachers to have a college.
But which building?
Any building will suffice.
One building would suffice.
Yeah.
I mean, not necessarily. What if they just meet outside?
Okay.
What if it's a virtual college?
Okay. Yeah.
You see what I mean? Again, it's a concept. It's a concept. It's not a thing.
Well, I don't know about that. It's something that we do experience. So I would say it's a thing.
Yeah. You can experience a college, yes. as you can experience consciousness. But consciousness is going to be those things that are the underlying processes. So, for instance, a huge part of a big part of consciousness is attention. So you need to have attention and focus, right? Because you can have altered states of consciousness. You can even be unconscious, right? If you go under anesthesia, you are no longer conscious. You can have altered states of consciousness by taking certain kinds of psychoactive drugs that affect the way the brain works in ways that we fully understand or mostly understand. And attention is going to be a part of that. So even if it's self-referential attention or just attention in general, many of those centers are pretty well described. So there's this series of brain areas that are known as the default mode network. It's called this because when they were putting humans into scanners and they were trying to get a baseline reading of like what it means to look at a human when you put them in a scanner, right? We're going to do a bunch of tests on you, but we need your baseline so that we can compare what the baseline is to whether we present you with music or we show images in front of you, or if you're doing something, right? We need that baseline. And the problem that they discovered is that like they would put people into these scanners and they'd be like, okay, we need you to clear your mind. Don't do anything. No thinking of anything. And the problem that they had is that there were these areas that were always active. And there was it was a subsection, a number of modules within the brain that were active. And they'd be like, no, don't think of anything, but you can't just like not think of anything. It turns out that when you're not thinking of anything, there's still an ongoing sort of conversation that's happening in your head, and that it's the default mode network that is involved in that process. And so these are brain areas that get turned on and they're firing whenever we need to be having sort of attention paid to these things. And they've also discovered that people who suffer from ADHD, right? They have attention deficit disorder. When we are focusing on something and we're just doing something, the default mode network actually decreases its activity. So if there's an activity where we don't need to be actively thinking about it, like we don't need to be paying attention to what we're doing, we're just doing the activity. An example might be like, okay, I've been given a deck of cards and they've been shuffled, and I just need to sort them into their suits. Well, I'm doing that. I'm just following a set of rules, and I don't need to be like thinking about it too much. I'm just like looking at the cards and just doing it. Someone with ADHD might struggle with that a little bit because their mind is wandering and they're doing other things. And it turns out that when people who don't have ADHD, the default mode network shuts down. It goes low when they are doing those kinds of activities. But people with ADHD, their default mode network tends to stay elevated in activity. So it seems as if we have these parts of the brain that are obviously involved with attentional processes that have to do with active thinking of things. And we know what those correlates are. And where was I going with this? Oh, right. So this is part of, the conscious experience in many ways.
By the way, I want to say something which is fascinating.
Sure.
98% of people today are declared dead when their heart stops.
Okay. Yeah.
Only 2% are declared dead from something neurologically. So getting back to your definition of death, are we declaring people dead that are alive? If your definition is true, a vast majority of the time.
Yeah, because like I think there's not going to be a clear demarcation of when we are dead and when we are alive. It is a gradual process. So there's going to be a number of things that we can use to say that someone is dead or not. I think when the heart stops, that's a good sign that you're likely going to be dead, if not dead. But is that brain death? Not necessarily, right? So if the heart stops and it doesn't come back on, we know that those people are going to die brain death wise. And within 12 hours, most of their brain is going to be goo. And then it won't work after that.
Okay. By the way, I'm just giving you my perspective, my perception here of what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
And I do hear this a lot with evolution as well, is it seems unfalsifiable.
Okay.
So just FYI, because I think if I don't have an example off the top of my head, I don't even know if it exists.
Yeah.
But I think if I showed someone to you that died by your definition,
Mm-hmm.
and 13 hours later came back, you would be like, I'm sorry, it's actually 13 hours, not 12. Then I bring someone to you that's 14. I'm sorry, it was 14, not 13. It seems like it doesn't seem very rigid to me.
Well, it's because it's not, and that still wouldn't be evidence that there's something immaterial.
Well, it would, because
why?
well, okay, so I'm trying to show you that there's something immaterial. I don't think you're open to it, but I'm going to keep trying.
Sure.
And I'm going to show you that there's life after death, but I don't think you're open to that either.
Okay. But why would someone coming back from, say, having been declared dead for whatever reason, but then 13 hours later they were discovered and they were not dead? And
well, no, I'm saying they are. That's the point. So I'm saying that for me to show you there's life after death, you have to take a stance that someone's actually dead, and not take the stance of, if they come back to life, they were never dead in the first place, because that's unfalsifiable.
The issue I have with this is that we can change the brain, and you can get damage to the brain, and that changes those things that are usually ascribed to what people might call a soul or a mind.
I don't understand.
So have you ever been with someone who's experiencing Alzheimer's?
No. Yes, I have.
Okay. And it's a pretty tragic thing. I had a great grandmother who passed away from Alzheimer's. I had an uncle who died from Alzheimer's. And you can see that, like, much of their personality and their memories, their ability to do things, it just gets worse and worse as the brain degenerates from Alzheimer's. And with Alzheimer's, you have this accumulation of plaques and tangles that are happening within the brain that might not necessarily be the cause of Alzheimer's, because it's probably likely that there are multiple causes of Alzheimer's, but these are generally going to be the diagnostic indicators that one has Alzheimer's. Those things eventually lead to neuron loss, and the parts of the brain that usually get affected first with Alzheimer's are those areas that are associated with the ability to form long-term memories. So it's largely around the more parietal portions of the cortex, which is where we have the hippocampus and other aspects, the entorhinal cortex. That's where it really kind of starts, and that's why memory usually gets affected first. But then it spreads from there, and then eventually there's personality changes, there's a loss of long-term memory, there's the inability to do certain functions, and then eventually, like, core basic bodily functions cease to work as well.
Yes.
And so is that, like, what's happening to the soul at that point?
Nothing. The brain is the interface between the soul and the body.
Now, how do you know that?
I'm stating that it makes the most sense thing that we experience.
Where does it interface in the brain?
I have no idea. I don't need to know.
Why not?
Because it makes it. I'm going to challenge the listeners to see whose explanation makes more sense. So the brain is the interface between the body and the soul. So it's like a computer. If your computer starts to crash, that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the internet, but you can't get the internet to function properly. The internet still exists, but the problem is with the computer, or the problem is with the brain. I want to go back to the split brain surgery.
Sure.
Can you share my screen real quick?
Oh, yeah.
I want to have a guy who's a neuroscientist who speaks your language. This is Dr. Michael Egnor. He says, as we shall see, this is in his book, the general intellectual atmosphere in which neuroscience is done today entails the denial of the soul. Yet the more I investigated, the more I discovered that these supposed findings of science were myths. The real findings point in another direction. So that's an interesting take from someone who's a neuroscientist.
Yeah,
who
I agree.
has changed his mind on this. Now, he believes that this split brain surgery actually works against what you're saying. And here's why. He says that when the brain is split, consciousness is not split. Therefore, consciousness is separate from the brain. And he refers to two people that did experiments. I forget the name of the first gal. She is deceased. Her last name was Sargent.
Mm-hmm.
But the second guy who you can look up is Yair Pinto, Y-A-I-R.
Mm-hmm.
He did a really cool experiment. He showed patients who had a split brain surgery something in one side, so like their left side, and then he showed them a different picture on their right side.
Mm-hmm.
So the two sides of the brain, which can no longer communicate, each had an image, but they could not tell each other what it was. And the patients could tell you a story based on the pictures. For example,
Mm-hmm.
one side of the brain had just a picture of a baseball by itself. The other side of the brain had a picture of a broken window. And the patient would say, he'd say, what am I telling you here? And the patient would say, a baseball broke a window. And so this seems to me to be solid evidence that your consciousness is separate from your brain, because the two halves of the brain from that corpus callosotomy cannot talk to each other.
So, okay. You're saying that the consciousness has to be immaterial. Wait, what are you trying to say?
I'm saying we can't say that the brain is the one putting those two things together, because it literally can't after that surgery has been done, which means there has to be something else that's taking both images and putting them together.
Okay. And how is it doing that?
Because consciousness can perceive.
How does it do that, though?
I don't know how. I don't know how my cardiovascular system works. I don't understand how my muscles repair each other, but I just know that they do. And so consciousness is unified, even in the case where the brain is split.
So, all right. When do we, let's get to the soul. I'm going to have to look up that experiment because I'm not unfamiliar with that. And it seems to contradict the other experiment that I'm familiar with, where if you show an image,
I can explain the experiment that you're familiar with and why it's irrelevant. The reason they can't say what they see is because the part of the brain that helps them talk is not accessible. That's why.
So we have so the lateralization, yes, right, exactly. It's not accessible. Right. So, but
that's irrelevant.
but it is relevant, because why is it not relevant?
Here's why. Somebody who's mute can still explain that they are taking in information.
Yes. And how do they do that?
Through experiments.
Well, sure, but do they use sign language to do that?
You can do lots of things. They've done experiments on people who are in persistent vegetative states to prove that they are actually hearing and can respond.
Okay.
Did you know that?
Sure. I mean, so just because someone is not able to verbalize, that doesn't mean that the auditory centers and the visual centers are not working anymore. Right? Like that. Like those are still going to be functional.
Yeah, all I'm saying is this. I am not a neuroscientist, but this neuroscientist who knows way more about this.
Sure.
This was so significant. I think it's the first chapter in his book.
All right. I'll have to check out this book. Yes.
Okay. And by the way, he's done over 7,000 brain operations. So he's like a big deal.
Yeah. I think that's not too unusual for a neurosurgeon to have done that many operations if they've been doing it for decades. But that also doesn't necessarily. So my experience with neurosurgeons is that they are brilliant with their hands and that they're fantastic surgeons. But I've had surgeons talk to me and talk, because at the previous institution where I was at, we had a medical school. Of course, there was a neurosurgery unit there, and some of them were involved in the education processes. Neurosurgeons, they would say to us that, like, you guys know so much more about the brain than we do, because you're actually studying the way that it works. We are mechanics in that our job is to remove glioblastomas. They're dealing with injuries to the brain, and then half of their job is mostly just dealing with the spinal cord, because that's often a place where people get injuries. So they're fantastic with their hands, and they know the mechanics of the brain and the way it works, but at the cellular level they know very little. Much more than like the average person, and even much more than the average doctor.
I don't know what
they're
he knows,
not, but neurosurgeons aren't. It's kind of like going back to our auto mechanic example. An auto mechanic will know an awful lot about a car, don't get me wrong, but they won't know necessarily about like the underlying metallurgy or like the underlying computer systems, right? You'd have to talk to a computer specialist to do something.
Well, here's the cool thing. He's published a book.
Yeah.
It's called The Immortal Mind, and he's put this in print. So if it's easy to refute, it should be easy to refute.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely going to take a look at it.
Okay.
So wait, actually, I got a question for you though. So like, if we're talking about this immaterial thing, and this is one issue that I've always had, is that like, where does it begin? Like, you have a soul, I have a soul. They're not the same soul, right?
Yes, that's right.
So when did you get a soul?
Probably at fertilization.
Okay. Why do you say probably?
That makes the most sense logically.
Okay. So it couldn't happen after that.
It could. I don't know. But I think if mainstream science is going to take the position that we have no idea when and where and how life began, I think it's okay if I don't know this.
Do identical twins have one soul or two souls?
Two souls.
But there's only one fertilization.
That I don't know. That I don't know. I don't know if there's something that happens at that fertilization, like meaning at the moment it's decided there's going to be twins. I don't know.
That's not how identical twins come about. So like,
an
egg gets fertilized. No, right. An egg gets fertilized with sperm, right? That's fertilization. It divides a little bit. So then you have multiple cells, and then it splits. And then you get two genetically identical twins that emerge. Do they have two souls or one soul?
They definitely have two souls.
How do you know that?
They're two different people.
Okay. But so that when did they get the two souls?
I have no idea.
So it's probably not fertilization then.
I have no idea, and it doesn't. So
well, it kind of matters, right? Because we're talking about a thing that like, when does it start, right? It's important to know like when it starts, and if it's not fertilization, it has to be after that.
Yeah. The reason I say it doesn't matter is because my perspective here, Chris, is that if we have a soul, and if the soul survives death, that has enormous ramifications for you and me.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. I mean, does it?
I'm forward looking here, not backward looking.
Okay. But it's important to have the full context, I think.
Sure. Right? And I'm happy to state, I think I can prove that we are not just a physical body, and that people have out of body experiences. And if your response to that is going to be, Will, you've made a good point, but I do think it's physical. We just don't understand that. I'm so content with that. I can't even tell you.
You're content with that?
Oh, definitely. I'll be so happy with that for sure. Because it's gonna be something that's gonna weigh on you, and you're gonna not be able to stop thinking about it. And I think that's a good thing.
I'm very familiar with the whole out-of-body experience phenomenon, and most of those are shown to be either coincidences or frauds. But
that's not true. Hold on.
Before we move on, because I wanted to talk, like, because I wasn't quite done with the where does the soul begin start?
Yeah.
Part. Are you familiar with the process of cloning?
No.
Okay. So you can clone an individual, right? This has been done in animals. Like, we do this in animals all the time. You can take tissue from an animal and do nuclear transformation. So you can take and you can even reprogram cells so that Okay, let me back up a little bit, right? So as we develop from an embryo into a fetus, into a human being or an animal or whatever you're going to call it,
we're always a human being.
Sure. Well, so souls are only found in humans, right?
No, I never said that.
Okay, I'm just curious. Is that how you feel?
No, we have something different than animals. That's all I know.
Okay.
Like we don't eat our young.
Are you? Oh, most of us don't. Yes, that's true. I at least I don't. Are you open to the idea that animals have souls?
I believe they do.
Okay. Do all animals have souls?
I don't know how we're defining animal, but I do want to mainly focus on humans.
That's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
I'm just curious to know where you're at. Do plants have souls?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. And obviously then bacteria and those kinds of things, they don't have souls. All right. So you think dogs have a soul?
I do. Yeah, for sure.
And
they have consciousness.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But like a fruit fly, I'm just trying to determine, like, you haven't thought about it that much.
I haven't thought about it.
Okay, that's fine. All right. So, but we can take an animal, like you can take a dog, right? You can take tissue from its ear, and this removes the ethical complications of doing this in humans, because there are ethical complications with doing this in humans. But you can clone that dog, and there are companies that are working to do this. Like, you can clone your dog. So if your dog passes away, you can take some of that tissue. They will do a nuclear transfer where they'll transfer it into another dog's egg, but they take that one, the DNA out of that egg, put in a full complement of DNA into that egg, and then get it to develop, and that's how you make a clone.
Mm-hmm. And it's not the same dog.
And it's well, I mean, is it? I don't know. Is that the soul or no?
It's not the same dog. No.
So, but then that dog has a new soul.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, apparently, yeah, for sure.
But there's no fertilization.
I don't know. I'm sorry. I know humans have souls from personal experience and science. And by the way, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, but if you were to do that with a human, because you could take yourself and make a mini Will, that would be different of 40 some years, and you'd have to find a surrogate mother, of course, to carry it to term. But it would be your DNA, and emerged from a cell using, the DNA that came out of your body, but there's no fertilization process.
I don't understand it enough to respond. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I'm just trying to determine, like, when does the soul begin?
Yeah, I just told you I don't know. Yeah. My guess is fertilization, but it doesn't have to. My arguments have no can be true if it happens at fertilization or afterwards.
Sure. Or afterwards, yeah. But it would help us to narrow down, like, what are the necessary components to having a soul. So it has to be after fertilization.
Well, no, it doesn't. But now we're getting too theological.
Well, so it's not theological, because, like, identical twins, if you agree that they have separate souls, they don't have the same soul.
No. Okay, here's the problem, right?
Yeah.
If something happens in the process and creates a twin, God can just give the twin a soul.
But there's no fertilization.
No. What are you talking about? There's fertilization with twins.
There's fertilization with the initial.
Correct. What I'm saying is if something happens after fertilization and creates a twin, God can give that twin a soul.
How?
Well, he's God. What do you mean how?
I mean, how does it get into the extra embryo?
God just gives it a soul. That's why this isn't going to help us. I want to talk about science. Okay. So,
but like because I study embryology, and I study the way, like, brains develop and that kind of thing. So I'm very much interested. Yeah, and I'm very much interested in, like, these early parts. Like, I am interested in the instantiation of, like, how neural circuits get developed and how they begin to function.
According to what I read, we know very little about the brain.
I don't know about that.
That's from neuroscientists. According to what I read, it has never been proven that consciousness is a byproduct of the brain.
Never. Well, there's nothing that's ever proven in science.
Well, hold on. Well, it's not even demonstrated.
No, that's not true at all.
It is. Yeah, it is.
No, it's not.
Okay.
No, seriously. You
Okay,
need to read
Chris.
more about this. Like we
Chris.
definitely have a good reason to think that consciousness is the result of material causes that happen within the brain.
Good reason, great, but
Yeah.
but how?
How
You
does it
keep
happen?
asking me how.
Yeah. Yes. I know, and I would agree
We don't
that we
know.
don't have a full complement of a working mechanism, and there's a lot of debate by how that occurs. But there are a number of theories based on this. There's the global neural network working space theory, and then there's the integrative something theory, and these are the two major models by which neural networks allow for consciousness to occur. One of those models talks about the hotspot, which is the origination zone in the posterior portion of the brain, which is the locus of the parietal, the temporal, and the occipital lobe, as that being the major center, because there's a ton of integration that occurs there. We know that damage to that area affects very much the conscious experience. But then there are other models. The global network model depends more on like being more prefrontal, and that the prefrontal cortex figures much more into that. But it's basically on this idea that we have a number of ancillary systems related to attention, to emotion, to perception. And then within that, then there emerges this framework called the global network. And that is the process by which this occurs. And that the consciousness is the emergence of that. Now, again, the thing that I like about that is that it is related to the fact that like consciousness isn't a thing, it's a concept. And that it's a number of processes that are underneath that results in what we can call consciousness. Just as like a college isn't just a thing, it is a collection of things and processes that we can call a college. A college is a concept.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
does that make sense? And so like those are debates. Those are model debates. There's an excellent paper. I'll send you a publication of this. It was just published in 2025, where they compared the results of these two models. I don't expect you to understand it. I don't even know if I necessarily understand it, because I was reading it in preparation for this, because it covers topics that I'm not a specialist in. But it's comparing those two models, and basically they brought the major proponents of these models. So it's a paper with like 25 authors on it, where they all agreed to like, this is going to be a way for us to compare these two models. And ultimately what they found is that there was evidence that supports aspects of one of the models, evidence that supports the aspect of the other model, but then evidence that seems to be inconsistent with one model and the other model. And so it appears that as if like neither group has exactly the right model, and then it's probably a blending of both of these to explain conscious processes. So now, but like, yeah.
Can I get a word in?
Yeah, please.
You did say something completely false.
Okay.
Which is that most of these NDEs or out-of-body experiences have been proven to be fraudulent. That's false. Now, I'm going to tell you something fascinating. Pim van Lommel submitted a paper to a very prestigious journal called The Lancet. Sure. Anybody can look it up. They didn't want to publish it because it's about out-of-body experiences. And they published it because they said the science was too good. Okay. Since then, Sam Parnia, who's not religious, by the way, has published twice in the literature about out-of-body experiences. These are confirmed, by the way. So I want to submit to you and your audience that confirmed, verified out-of-body experiences, which are called veridical perception in the literature, is incredibly strong evidence that we are not just a physical body. Why? So here's why. Yes. There was a woman named Pam Reynolds, and she had something at the base of the brain, which is incredibly hard to get to. It's like no man's land for a neurosurgeon. I don't understand it fully. I can explain and then I'll let you pick up, but it's, there's a lot happening at the base of the brain, tons of small areas that are very important for a lot of basic functions. So if you have a tumor or something growing in those areas, it can be really challenging to take a tumor out, because you can end up basically, ruining that person's ability to do anything, like including continue to live. Okay, so where they had to do surgery, they had to put her in what's called a cardiac standstill to do the surgery. The technical term is a deep hypothermic circulatory arrest. And I want to explain for everybody what this means, because it's nothing short of shocking. They stop your heart on purpose. They drain your body of blood, and they reduce your body temperature significantly. And not only that, they stick something in your ears that produces a 95 to 100 decibel pitch sound and monitor the EEG until it flatlines. So there's no blood in the brain, there's no heartbeat, and there's no measurable brain activity. Now, when you do this type of a surgery, it's obviously incredibly risky. It's very limited for how long you can keep somebody in this state. It's like 30 to 60 minutes. When she came out of this surgery, she described what was happening during her surgery, and she described what was being stated. I'm going to read for you a quote from Dr. Carl Green, who was in the operating room while they did this surgery. He said, she began to describe some details about her operation. And as she spoke, I became spooked. She talked about her blood vessels and her groin being cannulated and too small. She talked about her being shocked twice, giving me details that she just shouldn't know. So she had a verified with the surgeon out-of-body experience that would be impossible for regular science to explain.
Why is that an out-of-body experience?
Because she was above her body watching the surgeon perform the surgery on her, listening to the conversation happening.
So she described seeing her own body.
She described seeing her own body. She described the tools that they used. She described the conversation that they had. She described that they couldn't cannulate her on one side of the groin because it was too small and had to switch to the other side. This has been confirmed by the surgeons.
Sure. So the surgeons also agreed that this happened.
Yes. As you heard from his own words, I became spooked.
So, and then how often is the surgery performed?
I have no idea. That's a good question.
Is this the only documented case of this happening?
I believe it's the only documented case of an out-of-body experience with this surgery.
Okay.
But this to me is like massive.
Right. Would other people experience this as well?
Well, if they did the surgeries enough, yes. Now, again, my definition of death works here, which is separation of the soul from the body. But if somebody wants to disagree, which is fine, there is no explanation as to how she could have obtained this information. There is none. Her brain had no blood. She had these things in her ears making sounds. Her eyes were taped shut, and she had no heartbeat, and her body was reduced to like 50 degrees temperature.
How does the soul see these things?
The soul can perceive without eyes. It can hear without ears.
How do you know that?
Through these recalled experiences of death.
How does it see with no eyes?
You're asking the how question, which we don't have answers for. So there's a guy named John Burke who wrote a book called Imagine Heaven. He has the best analogy for this. He said, imagine you live on a black and white flat painting.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden you come into a three-dimensional world of color. If you end up going back into that black and white flat painting, how are you going to describe what you experienced? It's very difficult. Now, this is fascinating. People born blind who have never seen in their entire life have out-of-body experiences where they can see. And they describe things which they've never seen before. Again, strong evidence that we have a soul.
But okay, I disagree with that. That at least that part. I can't speak to this particular case because I'm unfamiliar with that case. But people that are born blind do have they can and often have a representational concept of space, even though some of these people don't even necessarily have eyes. So I can think of there are people who are born with, say, I can think of one case in particular. This man was born with a retinal cancer, and so at a very early age, they had to remove his eyes, so he doesn't even have eyes. He developed on his own the ability to echolocate. Echolocation, I assume you're familiar with echolocation.
Yes.
But I'll explain to the audience, right? So this is the ability to send out sounds, and then those sounds reflect off of your environment, and then they come back and you hit your ears, and then that tells you information about where things are located within the environment. So there are people that do this, and it turns out children that are born blind tend to do this naturally. They tend to make noises like clicking noises because they can and they do develop a sense of space from that echolocation phenomenon. And the way that he discusses it, and from what I understand, and this is outside of my field of expertise, so I haven't looked into the papers themselves, but from what I understand, when they do this process, it is parts of their visual cortex that are getting activated, which is going to allow for the understanding of space around them. The other thing that's interesting about these blinded individuals is that when they read with Braille, for instance, right? Like you use your hands to do that. A sighted person, of course, can learn how to read Braille. And when they read with Braille, it turns out that, of course, if I were to learn how to read Braille, it would be mostly my somatosensory cortex that's involved with that. That's the area of the brain that allows for me to perceive the touch sensation that's on my body, particularly in my fingers, that are going to get large representation in the somatosensory cortex. And it's going to be largely done through that. When people who are blind, congenitally blind, and they read with Braille, it is the visual cortex that is most often activated, even though they're not using their eyes. So the brain has an enormous level of complexity and capacity for neuroplasticity that can allow for a lot of flexibility that can occur. And yes.
Yeah, totally. But I'm talking about they had cardiac arrest.
Yeah.
And they describe things that happened while they had cardiac arrest. And they
right. Yes. So and you're talking about these blind individuals can see out-of-body experience. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And I want to give one more. By the way, there are thousands. The best book, in my opinion, on these, which has categorized them and put them together, is called The Self Does Not Die. The Self Does Not Die.
Now, how do we know that this isn't just aberrant neural activity after cardiac arrest that's causing this to occur? Because you can get fictive, you can get fictive memories to occur in people. Like we can do this in mice, for instance. Like you can take a mouse and are you familiar with the concept of the engram? Do you know what that is?
No, but I don't want to run out of time because I can easily solve this.
Yeah.
The number one, I don't think you're gonna have an answer for Pam Reynolds' case. It's just my opinion. So I really want you to look into that one. There's interviews with her online. There's interviews with the surgeons, everybody.
Sure.
Now I'm going to tell you about another one. And by the way, there's thousands of these now, so there's no shortage. But if you guys want to look this one up, just Google the 7-Eleven NDE. So 2 young guys were taking some sort of a muscle enhancement drug that was legal at the time, but it was sold out in the United States. So they ordered it from Thailand. When they got it, everything was in Thai and they didn't know what it said. So they took the same dose they took from the American stuff, which was way too much. They felt terrible and they didn't know what to do. They were like young, early 20s. They decided instead of going to the hospital, they they went to Dairy Queen. Search Dairy Queen NDE. They went to Dairy Queen. When they walked through the door, one of the guys felt so bad. He felt so bad. He went into the bathroom. It was a single bathroom and locked the door and died. Now that's me saying he died from my definition, which I think makes the most sense of all these stories, which is soul is separated from the body.
Soul is separated from the body.
His buddy didn't make it even to the counter to order and collapsed on a table. At a table. So they called 911 because a guy walks in and collapses at the table. The guy who died in the bathroom, they didn't know about him.
Mhm.
He was out of his body watching his friend be dead, laying in the Dairy Queen. He also saw himself laying in the bathroom, but here's the crazy thing. He didn't recognize himself. He was in the bathroom so long, his skin was purple and yellow. So he was like, who's this dead guy in the bathroom? He never recognized himself. He watched his friend. He watched them call 911. He watched the ambulance come, and he watched them take him away and go to the hospital. Okay. Then that whole process took an hour. Then another hour goes by, and somebody is trying to go to the bathroom, and no one ever comes out. So they go complain to an employee that no one's coming out of the bathroom. They knock on the door. No one answers. They unlock it, and there's a dead body on the floor. They call 911 again, and they come back out, and they look at him. He looks so dead. There's no pulse. They bag him. They put him in a body bag. And by the way, he's watching this entire thing happen from above, from his out-of-body experience. And they throw him in the back of the ambulance in a body bag. They don't try to revive him. They don't try to do anything. Then they turn it into a crime scene because they're not trying to rescue anybody. He's bagged. Sure. And they're interviewing all of the employees, like, can we get the footage? When did you see him come in? Does anybody know who he is? Et cetera, et cetera. He ended up reviving on the way to the hospital. So this is hours later in a body bag in the back of the ambulance. And he saw everything, not only with himself, but with his friend while he was dead on the floor in the bathroom.
So is this entity seeing his body and his friend's body at the same time?
Yes.
How does okay. So the soul can be in multiple places at once.
No. The best understanding I have is that our vision and the soul's vision are completely different. By the way, this also gives evidence to the blind people. When they've interviewed the blind people who have had these out-of-body experiences, they describe their vision as being spherical.
Spherical, 360.
All 360. And so when they get explained, we can only see very limited. They're like, oh, that doesn't make any sense to me, because the first time I ever saw was this out-of-body experience, and I can see in all directions.
And how do we know that this just isn't aberrant neural activity?
How can a body laying on the ground in the bathroom know what's going on outside of the bathroom and outside of the Dairy Queen?
So we have to just assume that this person abusing drugs is telling a legitimate story accurately, but also
we talk to everybody involved.
I mean, okay, sure. And I'm sure that was done very carefully in this case. However, it wouldn't be too hard to guess that, like, oh, if my buddy died or he fell over.
No, you wouldn't know. You wouldn't know any of that.
So you wouldn't know any of that.
No, of course not. Okay. Why? Well, how would you?
I mean, it's a pretty safe assumption.
He came.
They both took the same drug.
Well, hold on.
Yeah.
He only knows what happened to him,
right?
Because he was having an out-of-body experience.
But how do you? Okay, wait. But he knows what happened to his friend.
And his friend.
Right.
That's right.
Yes. Right. But
and remember,
he's basically so like there's nothing. Look, first of all, we have to assume that he's telling the truth. Right.
The good news is there's thousands of these, and they're verified. They're in the literature now. They're in the scientific literature.
Okay, sure. Right. There's all kinds of crap in the literature.
No, but hold on. Like, I don't want this to be your position. Yeah. I want you to realize that the surgeons are not lying. The people are not lying. Like, these are confirmed.
So do you think that, so like you have to, in order for the soul to leave the body. All right. So, because like this also sounds a little bit like I forget what that's called, but like observing outside of your body, even though you're in your body. Like, what is that called? Like it's not extrasensory perception, but it's sort of related to that.
I don't know, but I'm
Yeah.
I'm submitting to you that
Right.
we have confirmed things that are not in the vicinity of the body.
Yeah. Okay.
There's one, by the way, where it's been confirmed he traveled 525 miles out of body.
Right. Okay. So that was going to actually get to my next question. So this person was able to see something occurring 525 miles away from his body.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Not the one I told you, another one.
Right. Yes, because
Yeah,
I
yeah.
assume they were in the same restaurant. Yeah. So tell me about that. I'm kind of curious.
About the 525?
Yeah. Why was it 525 miles and not 520 miles or 500 miles?
Well,
What was special about 525 miles?
I'm going off of memory, but just give me 1 second here
Sure.
real quick.
Oh yeah, astral projection. That someone in comments has reminded me. Yes, that's what I mean by astral projection. Do you think that that's a real thing? Do you know what that is?
I don't.
Okay. Yeah, some people claim that they can see what's happening. So it's a form of out-of-body experience, right? They're taking their consciousness and projecting it to another place within the existence, and they can see what's happening far away.
Okay, I found it. If anybody wants to look this up, it's George Ritchie, Ritchie.
Mm-hmm.
He was in Texas, and his out-of-body experience took him to Mississippi.
What was going on in Mississippi?
There was, give me 1 second. This one I just read about. There's so many, it's overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
There was a bar or a cafe. There was a cafe that he went to 525 miles away.
Just a random cafe?
Yes. Yeah. And again, like there's so many. Like here's my challenge to you, Chris. I think if you look into them, you have to be swayed. I think you'll have to be swayed.
I don't know. I mean, look, do you believe? I mean, someone in comments, how many people claim aliens kidnapped them?
Okay, guys, you're not listening to me, please. These are confirmed.
Like, I know, but you're saying confirmed,
independent sources.
So the people in the cafe confirmed that, like, oh yeah, we were doing these things.
That story is brand new. I read it like 15 minutes before we started, so it's fresh. It's fresh on my mind. But yes, we have. Here, let me do this.
You say it's confirmed, and I don't know if I necessarily believe that. Like, obviously some of these things.
It's in the literature. So if you read that, the studies are being published. They are confirmed.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Could you quickly share my screen?
Sure.
This quote I love. This is from Dr. Lance Becker. He says, "Patients have told us things that we can't explain. And so our temptation is to just sort of brush it off in one way or another. And I think that that's probably not the most helpful way. And it's not certainly the most scientific way to approach it. I think instead we should try to understand it more and learn what we can about some of these stories that are some pretty hard to explain stories otherwise." Mm-hmm. So these physicians are being told things that are impossible for these patients to know, and they're being verified and confirmed.
Okay.
It's significant.
I don't know.
Okay.
I'll have to look into it. I have not investigated near-death experience all that much. It's something that, like, I'm sure there's like thousands, just as there are thousands of people that claim that they've been abducted by aliens. Mm-hmm. And I don't believe them either. And even many of those have been confirmed, or at least they'll say that they've been confirmed. I'll have to look into it a little bit more, but I also don't necessarily think that means that there's a soul, as we talked about.
Right.
There can be a physical form of some other form of perception that we're just unaware of.
Yeah, that's materialism of the gaps.
Sure. And just as there is a ghost of the gaps and a god of the gaps. Yes.
Well, actually, there is no god of the gaps.
I disagree with that.
Here's why.
Yeah.
We believe that he's God of everything, not just the gaps. He's God of of everything.
Well, okay.
That there would be nothing without God. Mm-hmm. All of this is because of God. So I go way further. I go way past God of the gaps. He's God of everything.
But So when you say, and we've only got 10 minutes, but because we're gonna end in 10 minutes, just so everyone here watching knows. And hopefully, if I look into this, we can come back and chat again. And
Yes,
if you would be into that, I would be up
for
to that
sure.
too.
I would.
So this would be almost like a reverse Erika. You're going to be coaching me on.
That's funny. That's funny.
So I'm going to come back with a debunk reel, just like you do for.
Good. I love it. I love it.
So all right. So okay, God is. What did you say? It cannot controls everything. He's responsible for everything. Everything exists because of God.
That's right.
When you say the word God, what do you mean?
I mean the uncreated creator of the universe.
Uncreated creator.
Yes.
What does it mean to be uncreated?
It means you do not have a beginning.
Okay.
Anything that begins to exist has a cause.
Yes.
So, because the universe began to exist, the universe has a cause.
How do we know that the universe began to exist?
All science points to that.
Not necessarily.
I think so.
I mean, okay. According to Big Bang Theory, we don't know what happened before the Big Bang, but I know that you don't necessarily believe.
But the universe still began to exist in the Big Bang Theory.
No, it didn't. According to Big Bang Theory, we can work back to about like something like 300th millionth of a second before whatever occurred, but we don't know what happened before that, or even like at the beginning of that.
I'm talking about the formation of the universe.
Sure. But how do we know that it formed?
A lot of reasons. We have the second law of thermodynamics.
Well, sure, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it formed.
Are you suggesting that the universe didn't form?
I'm suggesting that within physics, at least amongst physicists, that they are open to the idea that that there can be cycling of the universe, that the universe could be, have a Big Bang as the start of this current cycle and then collapse upon itself, that there can be multiple universes, that the multiverse theory of which is not, I mean, obviously I'm getting out of my area of expertise quite a bit, but I know that physicists do not know that, at least amongst practicing physicists, they don't necessarily argue that there's a beginning to the universe.
That's not what I hear. Everything I hear is that there was a beginning to the universe.
Yeah.
And the multiverse theory actually just makes the problem bigger because it now states there's something creating all of these universes.
No, that's not how physicists describe the multiverse theory, that there has to be things creating it. No, they talk about it as that there could be this like extra dimensional landscape in which universes of the 3-dimension form and then disambiguate, right? And that but that doesn't mean that they're created, or that there could be something that causes them, but that it would be some other cause.
Just for the record, the multiverse is claiming something exists that we have no evidence for, which I think is fascinating because we have so much evidence that Jesus Christ rose from the dead, and that is rejected. We have eyewitness testimony of that.
No, we don't.
And we'd rather believe in an infinite number of universes where we've only ever seen one. That's fascinating.
See, the problem, well, that's a totally separate topic, but we can get into the Easter story, because the problem with the Easter story, that if you take all of that eyewitness testimony that's found in the Gospels, you can't make a consistent story.
That's irrelevant.
Well, it's not irrelevant because it shows that at least some of the eyewitness testimony is false. Okay,
so when a crime has occurred, the multiple eyewitnesses, you cannot make a consistent story.
Sure, that's fair.
But what we do know is that the crime did occur.
Now, how do we know that the crime occurred?
Based on the eyewitness testimony.
Not necessarily, not if they can't all agree on it. I mean, especially when you talk about the resurrection, like for instance.
Well, no, I'm saying if details are wrong, that doesn't change the big picture.
I don't know. I don't want to get into it right now.
This is a big one for me because also evolution is accepted speculatively and theoretically and we reject the resurrection of Christ. That blows my mind. Like, how can we reject something that has eyewitness testimony? But
I don't think that it's eyewitness testimony. I mean, like, I don't think that it's legitimate eyewitness testimony.
what does that even mean?
Well, I mean, like, there's all kinds of claims of eyewitness testimony for things that are not true.
Well, okay, but hold on, because it's not just eyewitness testimony.
Well, what else do we have to show that there was a resurrection of?
Tons. We have archaeology. We have history. But by the way, if we apply your skepticism that you have right now, we have to throw out all history.
I don't believe that. No, that's not true.
Sorry, all ancient history.
I don't buy that. No,
for sure.
No.
Hold on. How do we know Cleopatra existed?
I'm not enough of a Cleopatra expert to say
it's okay. Yeah. It's okay. I'll tell you. All we have is written record. That's it.
Yeah. Right.
How do we know King Herod existed? All we have is written record.
Is written record. Sure.
I promise you, I've spent so much time thinking about this.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that Jesus didn't exist either. Because I actually think that there's probably a good case to be made that there was a person named Jesus who lived at that time. Like, there's enough evidence to indicate that that's the case. That doesn't mean that this person died, was dead for 3 days, and was resurrected and then ascended into heaven. And that when he came out of the tombs, that there were, I think it's in the Gospel of Mark, that there were that there were the prophets and other people that also came out of their tombs. So he wasn't the only one who resurrected that day, according to the Gospel of Mark, right? Like, Jerusalem was walking, like, there were literal zombies leaving their tombs, wandering around Jerusalem. And of course, that's the only instance of that testimony of that actually happening.
Right.
So there were a lot of other people that were resurrected that day.
All I want you to see, Chris, is that you're willing to accept abiogenesis and evolution with no eyewitness, and you're rejecting Christ's resurrection with eyewitness. Now, I'm going to end on this note, which is going to tie these two together, and it should give you chills.
Okay.
A Muslim had a near-death experience and saw a man and recognized the man was Jesus.
Sure. Okay.
And the reason he recognized the man as Jesus was because of the holes right here on his wrists. So what I'm trying to tell you about that is that people's religious views have been shown in the literature to have no effect on what they experience with their out-of-body experience, to where even a Muslim ends up seeing Jesus and not Muhammad.
But okay, well, Muslims believe in Jesus.
Not that he was raised from the dead.
Not that he was raised from the dead, but they believe that he was crucified.
Yeah, but why would a Muslim see Jesus in his near-death experience?
I mean, because it's part of their religion.
No.
Yes, it is.
Hold on. Jesus is almost a nobody for them.
No, that is not true. Jesus is discussed an enormous amount of times in the Quran. Like any practicing Muslim knows an awful lot about Jesus, because Islam started 630 years after.
So it's coincidence. That's fine. It's coincidence. That's fine. But
it's not coincidence. It's a huge part of their religion.
Well, hold on. There's a pattern, Chris. Even atheists see Jesus.
Well, sure. Of course.
Hold on.
Yeah.
How did this man exactly?
Right.
How did this man change the world? Our calendar is based on him. People died believing that he was raised from the dead. They changed their entire life to tell people that he was raised from the dead. We have to consider that this is actual history and that these weren't people that were just lying.
Okay.
That's all.
Fair enough. That's fine. I think that it's quite possible that people can be mistaken. They can believe different things. They can believe incredible things that just aren't true. And but that's not evidence that it is true. And it needs to at least be consistent with what we can observe in the world today. And we don't see.
Well, hold on. What?
Yeah. I'm talking about like resurrection of say the prophets coming out of the tombs, as is described in the Gospel Mark.
No.
Yeah.
That does not have to ever happen again. That's a
Okay.
bad argument.
Sure.
We
Okay.
have resurrections today.
We have
So that doesn't-
resurrections today
Of course we do.
in the form of someone being put into a tomb and dead for 3 days, or
Well, we don't use tombs anymore, but a
Sure.
body bag is pretty good.
Mhm. And they were there for 3 days.
No, I never said 3 days.
Well, that's what happened before, though, right?
That has happened, yes.
Yes, but it doesn't happen today.
Well, I don't know about that. That's a good question.
Okay.
I don't know, but I can tell you
I'd be
that
curious to know what the limit is for when a body can be resurrected.
there is no limit with God.
Gotcha. Okay.
There is no limit with God.
Yeah. So it could be
No,
years.
sorry, Chris. Final question.
Yes.
And this is actually a big one. I think people might laugh at me for this, but for which one of us is it worse if we're wrong?
That's Pascal's wager.
Okay, so hold on. This is interesting. I've never
Yeah.
looked into Pascal's wager
Okay.
on purpose because I don't want people to claim I'm using someone else's argument. This is Will Duffy's argument.
All right, that's
So
fine.
for which of
we
us
could
is
rename it the Will
worse?
Duffy argument, but it is Pascal's wager.
For which of us is it worse if we're wrong? Me or you?
I would argue that it's worse for you.
Why?
Because you will have invested an enormous amount of time and effort into something that isn't real, and your efforts could be spent on things that are real.
Okay, hold on for a
Earth,
second.
and we only have a limited amount of time on Earth.
You said enormous amount of time. So
Yeah.
if I'm wrong,
Yeah.
it's my life. If you're wrong, it's eternity. So which is
Right.
actually enormous? If you're wrong or if I'm wrong? Not me.
Yes, right. I see what you mean. Right.
And by the way, people have hellish out of body experiences and hellish NDEs. So Chris, just be honest with yourself and say, if I'm wrong and I have to go to hell for eternity, it's way worse for me.
I mean, sure, if that is real, then that would be problematic for sure.
It's just a hypothetical.
Yes,
if
right.
Whoever's right here.
But of course, the issue that I have is a lot more than just beyond that. Like, there's a lot that's within the Bible that unfortunately is just wrong.
Like what?
Well, for instance, Noah's flood.
Okay. So what if it turns out that Noah's flood, I'm just making this up, is just a story it's just a fictitious story to teach morality. So you can't worry about that.
What are the morals in
God's
in
existence?
Yeah.
It doesn't even matter if the whole Bible is wrong. God is still real.
But I don't even know what God is. Like you said, it's the uncreated creator.
Yes, he's the uncreated creator.
But what is that? What does that mean?
It's God is a supernatural being that we can show exists. By the way, this is important too. If anybody wants to know if God is real, they don't need to be convinced by anyone. All they have to do is ask him.
Okay.
That's it.
But to be a supernatural being, it means that that is above nature, basically.
Of course. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Not non-physical.
Beyond nature, not dependent upon nature.
Yes.
Okay. So do you also think God is omnipotent? So all powerful.
It depends on how you define it, but sure.
And then omnibenevolent.
Of course.
Omniscient, knows everything.
Of course, not the future, but yes.
So, but these are now, the way we're defining these things, these are not like, this is a definition. These are undefinitions.
I don't understand.
But what I mean by that is we're giving it a word that has no limit. So everything that we say that we believe in has some sort of limit. Like there's going to be a thing that defines it. Like a tree has defining characteristics. Which are giving me, if we're talking about the attributes of God, omniscient, omnibenevolent, omnipotent, depending on how we define these things, those are without limit. And then that becomes almost meaningless terms.
Well, hold on.
So it's this is an entity that has no limit. This is an entity that has no limit to its love, to its knowledge, to its power.
I wouldn't say that. No, I wouldn't
Mhm.
say there's no limit. But here's the cool thing.
Yeah.
Everyone has things wrong about God. I have things wrong about God. Christianity does. Islam does. Everyone has things wrong about God. So we can't base whether or not we accept or reject God based on what people say about God, because we all have things wrong.
Okay.
I simplify this, which is that God is the single best explanation for just existence and life itself.
Hmm.
There would
Okay.
be no universe that's finely tuned, and there would be no life without God. And the cool thing is that if someone honestly in their heart wants to know if God exists and prays to God and asks him to show them he exists, he will.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it's awesome. It's awesome, man. I'm telling you.
And he'll show like okay. I mean, I can keep going with this, but we're already past the time that we wanted to stop.
Yes, this was great. I enjoyed
Yes,
it.
this has been fun. And I will tell you, I will look into the book from the neurosurgeon,
Awesome.
and I will also look a little bit more into near-death experiences and see what I
Great.
can understand about that.
Yeah. I think The
Um,
Self Does Not Die is the best book that talks about them and explains why and how they've been verified.
mhm,
There's a free resource, which is nderf.org, nderf.org,
mhm,
which has the largest compilation of near-death experiences. It's over 4,000.
sure.
But you can just go on there, and there's one that they call like, oh, I forgot what it's called. It's not excellent, but it's something like that. And you can just, and it's just like their top 10 or 15 or whatever. So you can just go to that. And if you want to kind of get a head start, so there's plenty of free resources for sure.
Sure. There's a question here for you.
Yes. Yes, it was. It should be Monday. Erika got sick. So it was
Yep.
supposed to be yesterday. And I think it's going to be Monday now.
Mhm.
But again, she's still sick. So we're just kind of seeing what happens.
Yeah. I was
All right.
disappointed too. Yes.
I know. Chris, thank you so much.
Hey, this has been a lot of fun. Yes.
I agree.
You are very I mean, look, I'm super impressed with you. Let's just put it that way. And I really appreciate this conversation. And you obviously, know your stuff. You come well prepared. You're not someone to take lightly, that's for sure. And I like, despite us disagreeing over much of what we talked about, I say that this is legitimate disagreement where there's obviously a lot to argue over.
For sure.
And I have just enormous respect for you. So,
I appreciate it.
yes,
Likewise.
great.
So
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Yes,
Look into this stuff,
I
reach
will.
out.
Yes, of course.
We can do this again at some point. No
All right.
problem.
Sounds good. All right.
All right.
Good
Take
luck.
care.
And then hopefully it happens on Monday.
Yes.
Great.
All right. See
Great.
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.